What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Livin In Lex, where today we're going to be talking about a topic that is probably more relevant than it's ever been before. The real estate market has changed drastically over the past several years. There's a lot of speculation going around on what the real estate market is going to do going forward. Are we in a bubble right now? Is it going to crash? Are we going to continue to see the massive appreciation we've seen over the past year? And since real estate markets are local, as many of you know, meaning that the real estate market in New York versus LA versus Austin versus Lexington may be similar, but probably has some subtle differences, and I want to jump a little bit into those in this episode as well. As many of you already know, I'm a local real estate agent and Lexington native. I'm helping clients relocate here every day, sell their homes here. So if you're thinking about making the move here or selling your home here in Lexington, reach out to me today. I'll absolutely love it whenever you call, text, email me from the channel. It's my absolute favorite thing to answer questions about Lexington and help clients move here and sell their homes here. Also, if you like a lot of the content that my page is putting out, be sure to go below this video and press the subscribe button and the little notification bell at the bottom so you won't miss an episode. Now let's talk real estate. The real estate market that we are currently in has been absolutely absurd sometimes, with nationwide appreciation averages of well over 22% and way more in some markets even a little less. Lexington got a little bit below that 22% national average. One of the biggest things I keep hearing is that right now is the best sellers market that we've ever seen. And I want to challenge that mindset just for a second here. And I'm going to tell you that we're actually in a buyer's market right now. And before you turn it off, let me explain. Last year, we saw more appreciation in Lexington than we've basically seen ever before, even going back to the 05-06 appreciation days, but we're in a lot different real estate market than it was back then. Yes, it is a very strong market for sellers. Many of these sellers that were once buyers back a few years ago are able to capitalize on all the equity in their home, cash out, and go buy something else. The biggest complaint I hear is that it's hard to buy, or it's difficult to buy, or you shouldn't buy right now, and I'm going to tell you why you should buy right now. All indications and all of the big players of the real estate world are indicating that the real estate market isn't slowing down, and it's not going to anytime soon. In fact, some experts are predicting that this year could see as much appreciation, if not more, than we saw last year, which is kind of crazy to think about. So if I were to ask you this, if I were to tell you you were to buy a home right now and it would be worth 10% more than it was this time last year, would that mean it's a good or a bad time to purchase a home? I would argue that it's a great time to purchase a home. Yes, one of the biggest struggles is actually getting your hands on a home, but if you get a buyer's agent like myself that's able to advise you on the strategies that it takes to purchase a home and lock in one in this hot and competitive market, you can get a home in this market, and it's looking like it's going to continue to go up in value this year and for many years to come. So yeah, it's a wonderful market right now for sellers, especially if you're able to capitalize on all the equity that this market's given you. But I hope by the end of this video, you'll have a better understanding of why it's also a great time to buy a home as well. Let's talk for a few minutes about why we're seeing the crazy market that we are right now. The most obvious thing that's affected the real estate market, and is probably the first thing that comes to mind for a lot of people, that's COVID. Many industries were completely devastated by COVID, but fortunately for the real estate industry and for all of you homeowners out there, the real estate industry stayed very, very strong throughout COVID. The issue with COVID was a lot of people put selling their home on pause, decided they'd do it later on, but there were still a lot of people that needed to buy. And since fewer people were willing to sell and more people were willing to buy, it created an imbalance of supply and demand, meaning that there was less supply, more demand, and prices started to go up. We also saw new construction homes being put on pause during this period of time. Builders weren't able to build as many homes as they were before, and as we saw nationwide, building prices began to go up because it was a lot harder to get the materials needed to do these things, and everybody, for whatever reason, just decided to start their own little DIY projects during COVID, meaning there was a lot more demand for those products as well. We saw high demand, a lack of new construction, and dropping interest rates that promoted more and more people to buy because we saw all-time lows in interest rates. So until supply goes up drastically or demand drops drastically, it seems to look like that this market is going to continue the way it is for a while. Yes, interest rates are going back up, and that will get some people out of the market, but if you really think about it, they're no different than they were just a few years ago, because interest rates, even if they hit 5%, that's what they were at just a few years ago. I've talked about it some in former videos, but Lexington is pretty close to its capacity whenever it comes to new construction homes. Unless you're tearing down something and rebuilding it, or and you're one of the last few new construction projects in Lexington, we're not really that far off from seeing the end of new homes in Lexington. I think sometime within my real estate career, we'll probably see it. Not only that, but some of the surrounding areas like Georgetown is starting to begin to see their end of their new construction, at least for the next few years. They've kind of hit a sewage problem where they can't support all of the new homes being built there. So until they fix this issue, we're not going to see much more of it. We also see quite a bit of new construction in Nicholasville, and we hope to see more in the years to come. Eventually, I'd say they'll even go into Winchester as well. So yeah, overall, the big issue with prices going up so much boils down to inventory. But I want to jump into some of the numbers because I think it's a little bit more complicated to say that the biggest problem facing the market is inventory, because you may be surprised to know, but there's actually more, if not about the same amount of houses selling now as there were 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago even, as there are today. Let's take our numbers all the way back to the year of 2020 and the year of COVID, where we saw in Lexington, Kentucky, 5,275 homes sold that year. Now, 2020 did begin to see a little bit of the bidding wars and the high demand that we saw in 2021, but it primarily started in the year of 2021 when everyone was saying that inventory was at all-time lows. So while in 2021, when the media was talking about how low inventory was and it was at all-time lows, while this is partially true, but there were 5,275 homes that sold in Lexington in 2020, while in 2021, we saw 5,432 homes sell in Lexington when everyone was talking about how no homes were selling. So what does that tell us? That tells us that more homes are selling in Lexington than ever before. And you may be asking yourself, well, why don't I see any of these homes? That's because that homes are selling, and there's a lot more selling than there ever has been. They're just not sitting on the market all that long. Another major market statistic to pay attention to is how many months of inventory that we have. In a normal market, which may have been 5 or so years ago, we saw between 3 to 6 months inventory on the market at a given time. In this market and in Lexington, last year in 2021, we averaged less than 1 month's inventory throughout the year, which is crazy low. That's why if you were looking for a home in 2021, it felt like there was nothing out there. Well, in fact, we learned just a minute ago that in Lexington, more homes sold in 2021 versus 2020. So homes were selling, they're just not sitting. It is extremely important that we pay very close attention to these numbers from 2020 to 2021, because all indications are leading that this market is very similar to the one that we saw in 2021 today in 2022. The market looks very much the same that it did last year. So if we pay attention to what happened last year, that could be a good indicator of what's to come this year. And for those of you wondering, which I'm sure many of you are, the median home price in Lexington in 2020 was $230,000, while in 2021 it was $255,000. So what does that mean 2022 is going to look like? So the biggest question that I hear going around everywhere is, are we in a bubble? Are we going to see the next market crash here soon? Everyone remembers what it was like in 2008 when the market crashed, people lost their homes. It was really bad. It was even really hard on my family during that time as well. It wasn't easy. We look back to 04, 05, and 06 and say, hey, home prices went up a lot then. They're going up a lot now. So that just makes sense that there's probably a crash coming, right? Maybe not. 2008 crash happened for a lot of reasons, but it boils down to one major reason, and that's that lending practices were very poor back then compared to what they are today. So sorry to all the lenders that I work with, but you probably know it's true as well. The practices that they had in place back then just weren't as strict as they are today. About anyone could go and get a loan. You could have somebody making $50,000, and they probably could have got a loan on $1 million house. People straight out of high school were walking into banks and getting loans everywhere. Whenever you have all this and people are purchasing homes and payments that they just can't afford, they're eventually going to get foreclosed on. And when everyone is getting foreclosed on at the exact same time and nobody's buying homes because they don't want to buy a foreclosure, then that means that the banks can't sell them, and then now they've got to drop the prices on them in order to sell them, but still nobody's buying, so they just keep dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping until they hit a point where people are able to buy. This is a very different scenario than we see today. Lending practices are much, much safer and clearer than they were back then. And if we really think about it, before 2008, when was the last true market crash that we saw in the real estate industry? The Great Depression? I'm not an economist, nor can I predict markets in the long term or the short term, but I can tell you this. Everything that's happening right now indicates that we are in a healthy market for both buyers and sellers. It's a good time to buy because your home is going to be worth more next year than what it is now, according to the experts. And it's a good time to sell because you've likely seen a lot of appreciation over the past year and could cash out on all that equity. Mainstream media loves the idea that we're in a bubble or that there's a crash coming and that buyers should just hold out because you don't know what's coming up next. Well, they're right about one thing. You don't know what's coming up next. The people I trust are the big real estate industry leaders, the ones that are working in it every single day, and the ones that are putting millions of dollars into that kind of research. And truthfully, what's the alternative to buying a home right now? Is it renting, which everyone else is beginning to do because they think, oh, well, let me sell my home, cash out on the equity, and then I'll go rent for a little while I wait prices to go down. What happens if prices continue to go the way they are? Would it have made more sense to buy a home then and have more equity in that home now, or to sell out, cash out, buy a home, and then eventually sell it, have more equity and more money, and then buy another? You tell me. A lot of people have that idea of selling their home, getting the money out of it, and renting for a little while. And because so many people have this idea of doing that, that means the rental market is just as hot as the buying and selling market or the resale market at this point. If that market continues to be as hot as it is, rent prices are going to continue to go up even more than they already are. And it looks like they're going to continue to go up more. Drop in the comments below what your thoughts are on the real estate market and what's happening today. I'll be really curious to think what your thoughts are. Reach out to me if you have any thoughts of your own on the real estate market. I'm more than happy to talk about what my thoughts are and talk in more detail about what they are, but I'm curious to hear what you all think too. As I've said many times before, I'm a Lexington native and real estate agent, which I hope qualifies me at least a little bit to talk about some of the concepts that we've talked about today. So if you're thinking about relocating in Lexington or even selling your home here, reach out to me via text, call, email. I absolutely love it whenever people reach out from the channel to ask questions about Lexington or to assist with their move. So if you're thinking about moving within the next year, call, text, email me at any time. I absolutely love it whenever you all do. Also, if you like videos like this one and some of the other Lexington related content that we put out, be sure to press the subscribe button and the notification bell down at the bottom. So I hope you're a little bit more knowledgeable on what the real estate market looks like today and how it's going forward in Lexington and nationwide a little bit too, because everything that we talked about today was a little bit general, but it is so relevant to Lexington and what it's going to do in the upcoming future. With all that being said, I appreciate you watching this video, and I'll catch you next time on the next episode of Livin In Lex.